How about you learn to recognize the patterns so that you can make game time, speed of game decisions and execute them on your own, leaving the coach to do higher level things. Besides defense, we can also use pattern recognition for offense. Have you ever tipped a ball before? I hope so, because it's a really good strategy to get a kill. My question to you is this. Most tips do what? They go down, sometimes untouched. And when teams do touch them, they hobble around and they pop up the ball and does weird stuff, and you might get a free ball over. That's really good, by the way. Tips are an incredibly effective thing to use on most teams. Now, have you ever had the experience of tipping a ball and it does not go down? Like they just gobble it up, pass the ball right to the center, and they kill you with it. You feel stupid. You're like, oh my God, that must have been a terrible tip. Not true. They're just telling you that they're set up defensively. Their defensive pattern favors getting tips. That's generally what happened. If you do 2 tips and they both go right to the center, they're set up in a way that they're ready to get tips. I've played more than a couple different defenses in my life. One of the defenses is based totally around putting somebody called a tip guy right behind the block. So they're literally standing there. They don't play any other defense. They just stand there and get tips. And then you have to train your back row to do different things, but it's totally possible. You can have a tip guy. Your team might not, but other teams might. So my point is, if you tip 2 balls and they both go right to the center, the other team is telling you something. Just like the kid that beat you 3 times in a row here was telling you should move over. When you tip 2 times and they both go right to the center, they're telling you, we have a tip guy. We have somebody that really cares about the tip, even if it's not their only job. So what should you do? Put the next one deep. I don't care if you have to roll it back there, hand set it back there, in that same lane you were just tipping that you got it gobbled up, do it way deeper. Just don't go super duper high. See what happens. I can almost guarantee you that if the short ones are coming up, the deep ones are open. That is pattern recognition. My tips are not effective. That means something deeper is going to cause them a lot of trouble, and that is your job as an athlete. Cause them as much trouble as possible while making your own life as easy as possible. Last thing, pattern recognition can be used for self-accountability. Now, what does that mean? So when you are, let's talk about when you get beat on defense. When you get beat on defense, it's a lot like the block. You get beat and you go, oh, I'm terrible at defense. Oh, I'm so bad at this. Not true. Where did you get beat? Here? 3 times? 4 times? 5 times? Not, I got beat, I suck. How about I got beat here? Here, wait a minute. How about I move back there and put my hands in a different place and see if it's a little easier to dig that ball. It'll change hitter to hitter. And if somebody hitting here is beating you there, they probably won't be the same way they beat you here. You may have to take notes, mental notes, on each of the locations hits come from. But when you get beat, don't think that you're dumb or bad when you get beat on defense. Take note of where they beat you. Also, when you're, say, serving, when do you tend to miss your serves? Is it the first serve, the second serve, the third serve? Are you somebody that has a pattern? You'd be surprised how many kids have a pattern of missing serves. Some kids don't miss first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. What they'll do is they'll miss after an ace. This is something that I was shocked at and remain shocked at to this day. In other words, some kid might serve 2 balls, and on the 3rd ball get an ace, boom, that 4th serve, there is a high probability they're going to miss. I don't know if people get cocky or if they just forget to focus because they're feeling so good about themselves. I don't know, but you should pay attention, see if you can find a pattern in your failures. And serving is just one of the things that we're talking about. Because what we want to do is find patterns and change them so they're to our advantage instead of to our disadvantage. Lastly, when you say miss on your hitting, do you miss in the net? Do you miss out? Do you miss line? Do you miss by getting blocked? Those are all giving you pieces of information. In other words, you might be fine at everything except cross-court hitting. When I used to hit cross-court, I'd miss into the net a lot. And so what I did is I put a mental note into my head. I said, well, I'm free to do anything I want, but when I want the ball to go over there, I have to back off, touch it higher, and not hit it as hard until I learned how to be successful on that one hit that I was a little weak at. I don't know why. I don't care why. I just cared that I failed and I needed to change it. So I recognized my own pattern so that I could be my own best coach and change without the coach needing to step in, leaving the coach ready and available for higher level thinking things that I couldn't do on my own. So I told you there'd be 3 stories and I only went over 2. And there's a reason. Because pattern recognition is a really big deal. This story about a girl named Jen kept her from a scholarship, a big time scholarship. Jen was one of the most highly touted sophomores in America. The biggest schools were looking at her when she was that young. She was crushing people. Her team had won big tournaments and done very well at Junior Olympics. I can't remember if they actually won it or not. There was a big tournament back in the day called the Volleyball Festival that still exists, but it's not quite as big anymore. I believe her team won that more than once. And so she was kind of the reason at 14s and 15s. And so at 16s, she was being recruited big time. So my point is, I had the good fortune of being her coach in high school. And when I got her, I had heard of her, but I didn't know her. I got to the first day of practice and 3 balls go by me on the right as I'm the right front blocker. So let's make this more clear. She is over here hitting and I'm blocking, giving that typical small metal line. Well, 1, 2, 3 balls go down the line. Well, 3 balls don't go down the line on any educated player without that player going, if I'm getting beat here, I'm going to go stand in front of it and see if they've got anything else. Surprisingly, this girl was just a freak of skill. She just happened to have the world's most amazing line hit and literally nothing else. But, and when you're younger and the coaches don't see these things quite as quickly and the players don't react quite as well, and you tend to have shorter setters, you haven't had all the athletes your team's going to acquire just yet, hitting line worked all the time until she got to me. And so I'd move over in front of her in practice and I'd say, learn to hit cross, learn to hit cross, learn to hit cross, as she was getting blocked by me. And this frustrated her endlessly. I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was trying to make sure she was prepared for competition. I said, I'm jumping early and showing you my block as early as I possibly can. You're not seeing me, and if you are seeing me, you can't change for some reason and hit cross. Let's be clear. When she was hitting, that was as far cross court as she could hit. I'm not talking about she didn't have an amazing cross court shot. She couldn't hit the middle of the court. A freak of skill. A great player, if line's available. So, long story short, she fought it, but she did get to the point that she could kind of hit over here by the end of the season. Never once did she get a ball better than the corner. But that was progress, and she's a sophomore, so there's time, and you do your best as a coach, and kids make their decisions. Well, her 16th year in club, she lost all interest from all the major colleges because they didn't figure out a pattern. They watched everybody else figure it out. When you got to 16s, you get some pretty good coaches now. There were good coaches in 14s, but remember how I said the kids have a little trouble doing the adjustments? Well, guess what? Everybody figured out that all she could do was hit line, and so put people in front of her, and she stopped being nearly as effective. And she really started to try to learn to hit cross court. But by that time, she was a very normal hitter because she wasn't getting kills every time the ball came to her because there was always somebody in front of her favorite and only shot. Pattern recognition kept her from getting a scholarship. Pattern recognition tried to help her in practices where a coach was allied on her side, but she didn't want to hear it yet. So I want you guys to be aware of the power of pattern recognition. Be willing to hear it, try to use it, and make sure that it benefits you and you can use it against your opponents.